I'm Jason Hillman.
And I'm Becky Franzel.
Tonight on 35 or so minutes, we're talking about how we all used to know that smoking was super cool and fun and neat until Jeffrey Wigand and those assholes at 60 Minutes ruined it for everybody. At least that's what I think Michael Mann's The Insider is about. We're going to talk about it. We're also going to figure out where this ticking is coming from, because it's driving me crazy! Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Dead-Eyed Millennials. Today we're talking about Michael Mann's 1999 masterpiece, The Insider, more relevant than ever. Before we get into that, I want to introduce my co-host, as always, author, typewriter collector, cat collector, Becky Franzel. How you doing, Becky? That seems to be the mood. That seems to be the mode we're in.
How about you?
I'm doing my best. I'm doing the best I can. It's strange to watch this movie now. The reason why we're talking about this now, we were going to cover this movie in the future during some kind of Michael Mann special, but it seems especially relevant now. Stop me if you heard this one. The plot of The Insider is about a whistleblower that comes forward to talk about the addictive nature of cigarettes and how he was hired to perpetuate the technology that would make them even more addictive. He comes in contact with a CBS producer. He gets interviewed. They want to run it. But CBS corporate and their lawyers have decided that it's not worth it to run with the story because they will face litigation from the tobacco company, and they can't afford to do that because they are in the middle of a sale. If that sounds familiar, it is because that is the plot of this week's news cycle, in which the executive producer of 60 Minutes has quit because he has lost his ability to be an independent journalist because of pressure from corporate and lawyers who are facing a lawsuit from our president. It's a specious lawsuit. It doesn't make any sense, but the owner of Paramount wants to have a merger with Skydance, and they need government approval for it to go through. So they are pressing hard on 60 Minutes to toe the line, pay the money, and shut their mouths. It's an abomination. It is a discouraging look at the future. And looking back on The Insider, it seems almost prophetic. It's quaint, but it was a warning at the time, a warning that we did not heed because it was 1999, and a couple years later, some big stuff happened, and we were forgetting all about corporate malfeasance because we were worried about our violent, aggressive colonialism that would last for 20 years. But we are there's an argument to be made that this all started with the Bush administration and with the stolen election in 2000, blah, 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 blah. The Insider, Michael Mann. Becky, what'd you think of this movie? You've never seen this, right?
No, I hadn't seen it before.
Yeah, what'd you think of it?
I mean, it's horrifying to look at now because it's what journalism used to be, right? Like that bastion of not creative, but like that desire to bring truth into the world in its purest form, right? And now we're in such a strange place with journalism where everything is corporate run, right? Like corporate coming into a journalist's office isn't wild to think about anymore. It's always happened in the past, but right now it's so dollars driven and the stakes are so high, right?
Like I'd say 90% of newspapers are now owned by private equity firms.
Right.
And they're just part of a portfolio.
Right.
These guys would walk in and fire an entire staff and take everything online, and there's no
or journalists reading completely different words that they wrote, right? So the story will be published and it'll be different than what they had originally made, right? Because of corporate changes.
Right.
So
it can't offend anybody.
Right, exactly. And it's strange to watch this because there is such a pure journalistic integrity that exists in that, right? And for me, it was incredibly depressing because not only are journalistic voices getting silenced and we're not really hearing what's actually happening, we're in a worse space all around, right? It's worse to be a journalist. It's worse just the landscape of discourse. It's just not there anymore. Very happy take. Sorry.
Well, no, there is no discourse anymore. It's almost everything. And I deal with this every day, being chronically online. Is that there's nothing but reactionary. It is someone saying something, and now I have to react to it because they're so unbelievably wrong,
right,
that it's emotional. And it's the other way around for them too. We don't really have discourse. We have we lob bombs at one another, and we argue about which information is real, and we argue about the things. The thing that fascinates me so much is that we now argue about what we can plainly see. That is new to me a little bit, because there used to be a little bit of like George Bush was a moron, and we could all see that, and we were all supposed to pretend like he was some kind of strategic genius.
Isn't he a painter?
He's a painter, just like our other favorite world leader from somewhere. Now we have one of the dumbest con men that has ever existed in office, and they're telling us to hear things and see things that do not exist. And when people report on these things, like 60 Minutes is prone to do, like MSNBC is prone to do, like all of the opposition media, which is also corporate owned and also has its own ethics. But when they speak the truth, they are sued. And the thing with CBS is you're being sued over an edit that happens to literally every world leader.
Right.
Everybody who's ever run for office gets edited in the booth. He didn't even have the balls to go on the show, and he's suing them. And he might get the money, $20 billion, because journalistic integrity isn't as important as a corporate merger.
Do you think that the corporate takeover of, corporations have always owned journalism, right, to a certain extent, whether it's their sponsors or whether it's their advertisers, whatever?
To a certain degree, there used to be a bit more independence.
Oh, no, I totally agree, right? But I'm just trying to say, like, it's not 100% new, right? But right now, do you think the corporate takeover of journalism is impacting our public discourse? So the way that a lot of us speak online, right? Like our readiness to say, oh, maybe it's not so bad, right? Versus seeing the truth and being like, oh, instead of doing the Occam's razor approach.
Well, I think that corporate malfeasance in journalism has scared so many people away. That combined with the disinformation machine that has been at full tilt for the last 10 years has people disbelieving the news on instinct. They disbelieve information on instinct now. It's their default is to go, I don't believe that. I'm going to go get my information somewhere else. And because there's been kind of a distratification of news, every news source is equal now.
Right.
As long as you have a nice logo and you an official looking website, people will believe anything you put out there. So I think there's a tendency to find the news that verifies your worldview more than to find the news that verifies the truth. And that is the scary position we're in.
Well, especially when you think about like cable news, right? Where somebody will just decide that they like a news station based on like scrolling through versus like actually having the information to go off of. Like knowing that, like when we talk about like a Fox News, right? Knowing that what is said is actually factually correct doesn't necessarily exist anymore.
There's no such thing. Like is there a straight news program? I mean, the nightly news, sort of, but there's still kind of a lean there. Ever since the end, the end of the fairness doctrine in '87 has absolutely fucked two generations of information, because it used to be law that you had to have a counter viewpoint when you were broadcasting information. And it used to be like you could turn on the nightly news and you'd get the information. That's what blew everyone's goddamn minds about Vietnam, is that there were actually images coming out that were countering the propaganda that was coming out of the White House and various other pro-war sources.
Well, and also the technology had improved so people could actually go there. Like Hunter S. Thompson could go there with a video camera and put his face in front of it, right?
Exactly. You would have a photographer there who was sending pictures back, and we were watching it live.
Right.
And you don't have to be fair now. Fox News is a fascinating example because they were at the top of their game. Then they got humbled. They were called liars and sued justifiably.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they're leaning back on their propaganda, but they're doing this thing where they're really leaning into the gaslighting. Fox News, we all know, has destroyed 2 generations of fathers. Talk radio destroyed my father's brain. I used to watch it happen. Smart, good people who used to stand on business are absolutely fucked up. I got a former friend who's like, turned off the news and now like doesn't get vaccinated and everything's terrible and like it's a trans agenda and it's only blah blah blah.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because even when I was growing up, I was taught that like, oh, well, if you have a question, you go to the news, right? Like, oh, well, if you don't fully understand something, then maybe read the newspaper on it or watch something on it, right?
Right.
Like we're taught that these are people who have no agenda, that they're unbiased, that this is their perspective on the situation versus a corporation's filter of their perspective.
Right.
Right? And I still don't think our generation, like even our generation who grew up on this corporate shit, you know? I don't think we're programmed for it either because we don't know what the truth. It's hard to look at a video and fully understand what we're looking at when it's not our day-to-day, right?
We simply don't believe it. That's the thing, is like,
right.
Even if we have video
which is a
proof,
PTSD response.
That's the thing, is like, even though we have video proof of things,
right.
People's worldviews are so cemented that they will argue against it. I mean...
Or it's just too horrific. Like, looking at what's happening in Gaza right now, I mean, I don't want to believe it either. Fuck. Like, I don't want to look at an image of a kid and think, oh, that's just happening every single day. Of course, if your brain legitimately cannot process it, it will try to create something else, right?
Right.
So I get it, right? I just wish it wasn't the case, right? Or that we had a filter that could tell us what was happening that we could trust.
Well, that's the difference. Well, it's the difference between information coming out of there before and coming out of there now. The propaganda doesn't work because there are boots on the ground with cameras.
Right.
That's why they keep assassinating the journalists. That's why
right.
a woman who was the subject of a documentary recently that just got into Cannes, her entire family was very specifically, precisely bombed,
right,
literally the day after it got into Cannes. Now, there's video, like if you look at like the ambulance, when they attacked the ambulance drivers, there's video of it. Still, 900 people in my timeline telling me that it's fake, that it's AI, that Hamas made it, that the blah blah blah, the blah blah blah, the blah blah
right.
blah.
Which is, I mean, that's fascinating too because it shows how we've shifted how we view like video journalism, right? Like during Vietnam War, that was law. Right? We saw it and we're like, shit, that is happening. Right? And now we see it and we're like, that can't be.
Well, it depends on what side you're on.
Yeah.
If you're invested in defending those actions,
right,
and because you think you're part of some kind of eons long holy war, then you're gonna go, that was the bad guys.
Right.
But like, it has warped people's, like, if you look at people who are being murdered and you think of them as the bad guys, the propaganda has done an effective job.
Which I guess in Vietnam War, there was that shit too. Like, you'd get the Red Foremans who were like, oh, well, they deserved it because they're burp, 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 right? So I guess tale as old as time, but we're just living through it now, right?
Right. The Insider.
Yay.
By Michael Mann.
Slight deviation.
No, it's a perfect way to get back into it. It's a good segue because the movie basically centers around what costs the truth. How much does it cost to tell the truth? And it speaks to this kind of, and this is the problem, the liberal fantasy of the perfect witness,
right?
The unshamed witness, the untarnished human who can come forward and save us all, the hero of myth. And that's a Michael Mann specialty. His films are always about highly competent men coming up against incredible circumstances that they can't circumvent. And it is about myth meeting modernity. It is about men doing their best. Now, it's either men versus each other, it's men versus fate, but this one is about the fight of man against the structures that rule over us. What I love about this, Russell Crowe plays Jeffrey Wigand, who is a scientist who worked for, in this, a fictional tobacco company. And he was...
But it's basically Philip Morris.
It's basically Philip Morris, yeah. And he is basically, again, developing technology to make cigarettes more addictive because he's been instructed to. And he decides to inform the CEO that he can no longer do that in good conscience and they should move away from it. And they willingly tell him, and are conscious of the fact that they need their product to be more addictive because it'll affect sales if they stop doing it. So they fire him, make him sign an NDA, at which point he's receiving severance payments. His family is taken care of. At the same time, the CBS producer Lowell Bergman receives an anonymous package of a number of chemical compounds and a bunch of papers from a cigarette company. He reaches out to Wygand to help him decipher this stuff, and it comes up against the man's NDA. Quote-unquote Philip Morris threatens him with an even stronger NDA because they somehow found out about it, and thus becomes this kind of cat and mouse game where Lowell is attempting to get Wygand on the record about what he knows. And at the same time, there is a smear campaign of misinformation and misinterpreted reports and simple lies being put out about Jeffrey Wygand to dissuade him not only from testifying, but to dissuade others from believing him. And so it is the beginning of these smear campaigns. What I find most charming about this, and we were talking about this before, is all of that stuff happens in this kind of analog way. Today, the movie's 2.5 hours. Today, it would be an hour because it's all phones, it's all faxes, it's all newspapers being thrown off the truck and into the places.
Well, he simply would have spoiler, basically what 60 Minutes does is they say we can't air it because we'll be buried.
Sued into oblivion. Yeah,
which they would have been, right? But basically what he would have done is just loaded it up onto YouTube or something like that. Like, story over, right?
That kind of story, right. It's but at the same time, there would be 100 different Twitter accounts, 100 different thread accounts, 100 different Instagram accounts that are telling you that Jeffrey Wygand is a pedophile, he is a wife abuser, he is a drug addict, he's a teacher in a school. How can you blah, 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 blah,
Which
blah?
is incredibly important to consider now because we see that shit all the time about people, and with no self-reflection, because we all have shit. I mean, I have traffic tickets. I'm very public with the fact that I have a DUI, right? Like, I have shit. If I did something tomorrow and let's say the government decided to go against me, they'd have so much, right? And I'm an average citizen, an average tax-paying citizen.
Right. I think one of the lines that stuck with me when Lowell and Mike Wallace and their producer and the lawyers are talking, they're talking about a legal concept called tortious interference, and the line is, the greater the damage, the greater the threat. So Jeffrey Wygand has knowledge, industry-destroying knowledge, mind-blowing knowledge about a conspiracy from a corporation to endanger the health of its customers.
Right.
And because that truth is so powerful, it's even more reason for them not to air it. Because it puts the corporation in more danger from the other corporation.
Right.
And it's worth more to CBS at the time to get the sale to Westinghouse than it is to reveal the truth about how there is a genocide of the lungs and of the body and mind of generations of people at the hands of malicious assholes who perjured themselves a couple years prior in congressional testimony.
Right.
That is not as important as getting that sale and getting that bonus.
Which is just the most,
it's egregious.
Thing.
It's
the most capitalistic thing.
Yeah.
Especially for something like 60 Minutes, where, I mean, we've talked about this, where 60 Minutes is trustworthy, right? Like, I grew up on 60 Minutes.
Same here. Same. And there's a trustworthiness to it, and of course, it is a corporate-owned company, and they do the best they can. But with people like Morley Safer and Mike Wallace and I forget the names of the other ones. There's a whole crew of Power Ranger journalists on there. But Mike Wallace was a man who would sit across from you and eviscerate you in an interview to get the truth. He was talking to people that people just don't talk to.
Right.
That people that don't talk to anybody.
Right.
And he was getting the information from them. He was a good journalist. He was a great journalist. And what's interesting about this scenario is this was the wall, because he realized too, and that's another thing that Lowell Bergman, Al Pacino, he's doing his best to do he just wants to tell the truth.
Right.
We got to what do you mean? We can't air this. This is the truth.
Well, and also breaking that relationship with the guy he's interviewing, right?
He's
and that's to him. I mean, and I get that. That's like you might as well break his fingers, right? Like that's the worst thing you can do is lie as a journalist.
As he's
even if it's off the record.
Very eager to remind you, I don't burn anybody.
Well, which makes sense.
But yeah,
right?
but his entire
because if he did that, then who, like he said multiple times, who would interview with him after that?
What's his reputation going to be like?
Right.
He can't operate as an independent journalist if I can't control not only who I talk to,
right,
what I can say, and keep those people safe.
Right. Especially if you're doing actually important journalism.
Right.
Right.
And that was Mike Wallace, after like a 50 to 60 year career, hit a wall where he was like, I want to keep doing this. And if I can keep doing this, I'm going to have to take the side of the aggressors.
Right.
Now, eventually he does come to his senses, and there's a moment where he yells at the lawyers, and that's very nice. Played by if you're old enough, Gina Gershon. Just something. We had a crush on Gina Gershon in the 90s. She just shows up for 5 minutes as a lawyer, and you're like, you hate her. You hate every moment of it because she's obscenely attractive, but she's also telling you that everything you do is a lie and garbage.
Yeah,
and
she's the plastic overlord.
Yeah. It's just it is a documentary basically about the end of journalism, the end of real journalism. Because from the 2000s on, everything shifted. Even our most trusted news sources were feeding us garbage about the Iraq war. Oh, there's weapons of mass destruction. Right. When are we bombing? Whoa, we took down Saddam. Not an ounce of critical thinking or critical coverage of that thing for years. And coming even from people that we trusted.
Right.
So it is this...
Which makes sense why people go to the fringes then, right? Like,
yes,
a lot of people give conspiracy theorists a lot of shit.
Well, they should,
but like,
for some of them.
For some of them, yeah. Yeah. But also at the same time, like, of course you're going to look other places if you don't truly believe what's on the news.
Right,
right. And you shouldn't 100% believe what's on the news because half the time it's sponsored by, like, insane corporate overlords that you wouldn't even imagine, right? Like Philip Morris is a huge one in the late 90s, right? Which you wouldn't even think. Why would your news organization be funded by Philip Morris, right?
Well, who was funded by Philip Morris?
I mean, maybe I'm wrong on that actually.
I think Philip Morris basically formed its own organizations to spread disinformation about their own product because they had a health and safety organization that was devoted, and they still do. These cigarette corporations have anti-smoking campaigns that are trying to tell you to get off their product, but they're trying to steer you into other versions of their product.
It's the same thing as the oil companies saying, oh, well, you just need to reduce the amount you're driving, right?
Now, oil companies on TV, oil companies advertising to me, oil companies when I ever see BP, they're sponsored by BP. I hate your thing immediately.
But it's hard.
You're disgusting.
Right.
But there's no...
It's hard when they have all the money, though. Well, and they sponsor fucking everything.
There's no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Right.
Blah, blah.
I guess that's more what I'm saying is, like, there's the financial thing there happening, right? Like, if you say anything against these corporations, they will fucking bury you. And that's only gotten stronger. It's not like that... It's not like, this movie came out and we were like, oh, geez, that's terrible. Let's not do that anymore. No, it's gotten so much stronger now.
Well, it's because movies don't... People don't act because of movies.
Right.
And that's the thing is, like, we didn't know at the time that what it was a paean to the old ways.
Right.
We just thought it, like, at the time, and every time I've watched, it just comes off as a really interesting examination of an event that occurred.
Right.
But now it seems like a funeral dirge for a way of life and a way of disseminating information that no longer exists. It is quaint. Almost, because like Wygand goes through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the thing I love about this movie. It's the one thing that, like, it's a realistic thing is that the first half of the movie, it's like a mythological hero. He rises from nothing. He is sacrificed everything to tell the truth, and he's gonna get it done. And you think he's gonna have a zappy ending. He lost his wife. He lost his kids. He's been harassed constantly. Maybe not as much as he told you he did because he's kind of a weird guy. But
that shouldn't matter. Yeah.
Then they're going to air the thing. And what happens is it is this crashing halfway through the movie. Spoiler alert. We've been talking about it. They don't air the interview, and he has a downward spiral. It is, again, myth meets modernity. It is David being told that he's not allowed to own the slingshot as he fights Goliath because it might offend the Slingshot Corporation, or it might offend the people that made the slingshots who aren't really against the giant.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's going to have to use another tool. But we prefer if he didn't, if he maybe found another compromise, because we really need the giant's money to pay for our yachts.
But we really respect the effort.
We respect the
Wow, you're so brave.
David,
But we'll fuck you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't care.
There is... there's this crashing in the middle of it where he doesn't get his happy ending. I mean, eventually he does get his happy ending, kind of, but he sacrificed so much that even watching it, it feels like it wasn't worth it.
Right.
Like I don't know, man. You lost your house, you lost your kids, you lost your wife, you lost your job for one interview that changed nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I mean, the movie came out, I loved it. There were anti-smoking campaigns at the time. I remember I still have my, oh God, what were they called? Whatever, I forget the name of the little tiny startup that would walk around and they would give you T-shirts.
Oh, like in the mall and things like that?
Well, they were anti-smoking.
Yeah.
And they would walk around, they'd give you shirts, you'd be in line, and I'd be smoking with them. I'd be smoking near them. I smoked Camel Tins. And that's the thing that happened. Once we all realized that cigarettes were actually bad for us through a long campaign through the 90s, they started catering to us in different ways. We had flavors. We had vapes. There was a pivot, but it's not like it dismantled the cigarette industry.
Right.
The poison still continues to be sold.
Well, I mean, that's one of those things where, like, I think it's more important for the information to get out.
Almost, like,
but like you're never gonna fully get rid of it. How at this point, how do you get rid of that giant?
Well, I mean,
right?
What was the point of his sacrifice then? That's the thing. It is a heroic sacrifice in service of nothing.
Well, to get the information out, to get them to say, yeah, this is what's in here.
And what did it change? And who was charged? And who had to pay for it?
Yeah,
and
nobody.
Who went to jail for the degradation of the health of generations of people.
Oh, yeah. No, I absolutely agree. But my point is, like, I think the goal was to get the information out. Like, that's the most important thing. Was once the information's out, then it's public discourse.
Right.
Right? And it's up to the public's opinion on what to do. Right? But the problem is when they're just lying bold-faced and nobody has the information.
There's nothing to do with the information. And I think that's one of the things we're talking about with the gaslighting now. I have all the information. I know what's happening. I know the truth. What does it matter? It doesn't mean anything. It's a fraud.
Right.
Like, the truth means nothing when it's being manipulated in real time in front of you.
That's true.
You know what I mean? Like, when we're talking about people who are wrongfully deported to a concentration camp in El Salvador, every single document states that there was no reason for him to go there. But I'm being told from every direction that he's part of MS-13, that he's a gang member, that he's a wife beater, that he's a human trafficker.
Well, and that's another example of, like, the harder that they try to make this person a villain, the more you know that they're wrong.
But it doesn't change anything. He's still there.
Right.
I know all that. You know all that.
Right.
Some people with brains know all that.
Right.
But But we still have to be. We have to remain in our seats with the knowledge that that man is still suffering, and our truth means nothing.
But for those people who cannot read it, it's important to see, like, oh well, if the media is villainizing somebody so much, perhaps it's time to look deeper into what's actually happening and strip the human from it. Right? Look at the act versus looking at the human that they're trying to make as like oh well, this only happened because this person's a really bad person.
You would do that.
Right.
I would do that. But that's not the average response to it.
But I think what I'm saying is it should be the lesson that we take, right?
Oh, yeah, it should be.
Especially right now, because we're seeing that all over.
Right.
Of like, and even on the other side too, where like fucking Pete Hegseth keeps releasing all this shit on Signal, and it's just, oh well, it was just a mistake. It's not that big of a deal. And that's scary too, because like looking at the act versus looking at the person, they're just saying, oh, that's just Pete Hegseth, right? But the act is incredibly terrifying, and we need to look at the act.
Well, that's the thing is, like, if you're talking about this administration in particular, it's weaponized incompetence.
Right.
They don't need competent People. Pete Hegseth is a caricature of a man.
Right.
Who looks like a man, from central casting to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And as long as his square-jawed incompetence manages to not burn the building down, he does not give one single shit. What I love about this movie is that it's just this really beautiful time capsule of a world that just simply doesn't exist anymore, except for the corporate malfeasance. But also, as a film, it is the kind of movie we simply don't see enough of anymore. And we got some of it. It's just this really adult drama about an adult circumstance filled with incredible actors putting on their best work. And it's shot by one of our masters, who is known for this movie is surrounded by Collateral and Miami Vice and Heat, of all things. You know how I feel about Heat.
Oh, I know how you feel about Heat.
But it's the same concept, just men doing their best against the circumstances of living a human life and throwing it all the way for what they think is the right thing. I mean, the ending of Heat has Robert De Niro almost getting away with it, but he has to just have his thing. He has to do his thing. He thinks it's worth more than the life he's built.
Mm-hmm.
It's always like that. Collateral, I mean, if we're just talking about those movies, Collateral is Jamie Foxx, who simply is not living the life that he wants to live, and the only way that he gets any motivation is when he's basically kidnapped by a serial killer.
Tale as old as time.
Tale as old as time. But it's just this beautiful adult film filled with adult themes. It's slow moving. It's exciting, but it's not flashy. It's flashy in a Michael Mann way. There's a lot of extreme close-ups, a lot of moving the camera around, a lot of the interesting lighting that he always does. But it's in service to a very small tale, whose consequences are huge. Oppenheimer, like last year, Oppenheimer is a very adult movie, and that was great, but it was about these huge themes. We don't get a lot of adult movies, original adult films in theaters anymore. That being said, I mean, Sinners is out right now. Ryan Coogler is really carrying the torch for cinema right now. And that's an original concept, greenlit by a studio where a man was allowed to make his thing. But most of the guys are going to streaming. This is one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite important movies, and it's one of those underlooked movies from 1999. Which is commonly known as the year the greatest movies ever made were released. What did you think? As a movie, as a film, what was it like watching this thing from 1999, this time capsule?
Well, I mean, it's hard not to get caught up in the message of it, right? But I think that's it's stunningly shot, but there are really no frills to it. And it's mostly about the message and communicating the message, right?
And everyone's really good at it, in it.
Yeah.
It's like Russell Crowe, we forget that Russell Crowe is just one of the best actors to have ever lived. This was immediately after Gladiator. Immediately after he was huge. He's this big, buff dude giving monologues in the middle of action scenes. And the next year, he puts on a bunch of weight to play a guy 20 years his senior. And just nails his mannerisms, nails his nervousness, nails his anger.
In a very muted way, right? In a way that's relatable to anybody as you put yourself in his shoes.
Restrained rage. And that's really hard to pull off on camera. It's usually like expressed rage. Al Pacino's the opposite. He's always expressing his emotions.
Which is also a very good journalist character, right?
So to have those two bouncing off of each other, their chemistry is incredible, the way that they bounce off each other. I have to give a shout out before we move. One of my favorite scenes of all time in cinema, I might have YouTubed this more than the ending of The Social Network, is Bruce McGill in court in the state of Mississippi, where they've determined that if Wygand can give some testimony and get it on the public record, then it kind of circumvents the NDA. Philip Morris, quote unquote, has sent their lawyers to try to stop him. And Bruce McGill is one of the lawyers, and he is just so patient and so kind. And then this guy starts yelling at Wygand, and he's like, I object, or I have the right to object. And Bruce McGill goes in on him so hard, and the guy smiles, and he screams at him. wipe that smirk off your face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the greatest thing. It's one of those line readings that's just like, it changes the entire tone of the scene that's been building up to. It shows how incredibly weak the rhetoric coming from the lawyers on the corporation side are. And it shows how powerful, how angry the people fighting against this nonsense and fighting against these monsters are. It's a great scene. Bruce McGill is one of our underrated character actors. I love that scene.
Yeah, I loved it.
What stuck out to you? What was a particular scene to you that resonated with you?
I mean, the moment when he finds out that, or when he sees it aired, right? And he's just, Wygant is just sitting in his hotel room and he's just motionless. It looks like Pink Floyd's The Wall, right?
Okay, yeah.
And he's just, because you feel that dread, right? He just lost fucking everything.
Mm-hmm.
He lost his job, he lost his family, he lost everything, and for what? Right? And I feel like a lot of us are feeling that way. Not like, what's the point of doing anything? Because you'll just be crushed by the overbearing weight of everything.
Are you talking about when he's waiting for it to air the first time and it doesn't?
No, it's when he's watching it.
Okay.
In the hotel room, right? Because he's divorced now and he doesn't have his home. He's living in the hotel room. That, didn't he say it's him and his wife's favorite hotel room or something like that?
No. He was drunk and mocking Lowell.
Oh, okay. I'm that went right over my head.
He checked into the same hotel room that Lowell had met him in the first time.
Oh yeah, that went right over my head.
And it was overlooking his former employer.
Okay, that's right. I remember that. Yeah.
And that's the hotel room he hallucinates his children, having his children back, having his wife back, having his life back.
But it guts you. It rips right through your stomach, right?
Yeah.
And especially as the concierge is upstairs, or the owner of the hotel, the manager, whatever, is upstairs yelling at Wygant, like, answer the phone, answer the phone, answer the phone. And you don't know if, like, I assumed he was dead, honestly. Like, I thought
I think that's that's the way they played it.
Yeah.
When Lowell forces the guy to yell at him to wake up. Yeah.
But again, very Pink Floyd's The Wall.
I mentioned the wife a bunch of times, and like Michael Mann, he has a tendency to just have characters that are the wife and the partner as things that the men fight for, but are not really well-rounded characters. And Diane Venora, one of my favorite actresses of the 90s, a staple of Michael Mann movies. Also, Lady Capulet in the Romeo and Juliet movies. She's just great because she'll throw all of the emotion she possibly can into a grossly underwritten role. Does a great wall slide in this.
Yeah, she does.
A great wall, oh my god, the world is crumbling down slide.
Which, like, and that's the funny thing about this movie is we don't really understand, like, it doesn't really show how fucked her world is, right? She just wants to be a house. Like, she just got ripped from this beautiful home with her 2 daughters. One of them has severe asthma.
Right.
And the way that her character is shot is just like, she's just taking advantage of Wygant. Right?
Yeah, it's the ungrateful wife who doesn't see the sacrifices that he's making. Even I fell for it too. Like, as I was watching the movie, I was like, dang, like, if I was her, I would be standing up for what I would be, standing by your man. Not even that, but like standing up for the cause. Oh, sure, right. Of like, oh well, don't you understand? This cause is so much greater than your big house and But when you're in that situation, I don't like if Sid had asthma, right? Sid the cat. Yeah. I would be upset if I just lost it all, right? I gotta pay for his kitty asthma. That's very funny. And then there's like Lowell's got an assistant that barely gets any screen time, and of course the lawyer is played by a woman, and you're be mad at her.
This script really does not like women in decision-making roles. Like, if they try to make a decision, gosh darn it.
Well, they make women responsible for giving bad news. Yeah. A lot of bad news, they put that on the women. So it's like, well, they might be a dick to them, but that's the news they gave me.
Because she's just a cold-hearted bitch.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is why you got a peak Gina Krishan in there. Like, she looks like everything incels complain about. It's great.
Yeah. He needs more lady friends.
Michael Mann is not good at writing women. No. It's just straight up. It's a problem that he has.
He just needs one friend who's a girl. Like, just friend, right? Just platonic friend. Just to pass the script by and be like,
Even in Ferrari, where God, what is her name? Penelope Cruz plays his long-suffering wife, and she's very good at being angry at him, but it's just another bit of opposition for him to achieve glory, despite the fact that he's, being called out for being a fucking dick.
Right.
Yeah. That being said, that's a nitpick that I have with Michael Mann movies, but it tells the story effectively. It's beautifully shot. The score is incredible. Everybody is great in it. I cannot recommend this movie enough. It is one of my favorite movies. I think it's Michael Mann's best movie in terms of what he's using his powers for. I don't think it's not the movie I go back to as often, but I do watch it a lot. Heat is the movie I go back to. Sorry. But like I love it. The Insider, such a powerful, resonant film that is more important now than anything else the man has made. It's never been more relevant to the culture than it is now. Powerful, beautiful, love it. Becky, your final thoughts?
I think you basically summed it up.
Yeah, but I want to hear your thoughts. I'm not Michael Mann.
I think you basically summed. I mean, it's basically what we've been talking about, right? Like, I think it's incredibly important to take some of the lessons that we've learned from this movie, like, hey, maybe don't listen to what the media is saying about this one individual person trying to call out a systemic problem.
Right.
And like, oh, hey, like, maybe let's think about which corporations are supporting which media conglomerates.
But did you ever think that maybe he had a weird laugh?
Remember that one time when he was 11 and he got caught with weed?
He doesn't really explain things well, though.
Because he's a scientist.
He and his wife had arguments. Yeah, absolutely. Actually learn about what you're judging. While stripping away the weird personal shit that the media tries to add to it. Right? On either way, if they're human or if they're like making somebody into a hero as well, that's also something we should question, right? Of like, why the fuck are we gassing this dude up without talking about what they actually did? I'm talking about the Luigi Mangione thing, where all of a sudden we got all obsessed with his cheekbones instead of talking about what the fuck he actually did. Right, right. I mean, it even applies to the Kilmera Garcia case, which is like, you know what I mean? It's well, why would you care that he was deported without due process? He and his wife got into arguments, and he did this and he did that.
But it doesn't matter because
not only is it not
it's
true,
illegal.
He didn't get due process.
Right, exactly.
You have to prove this stuff in court. Let them determine that he's an asshole and then ship his ass off to a concentration camp. But without that crucial first step, we cannot crucify people in the press for unlawful actions.
Right.
Yeah. Committed against them.
Right. And every single action like that should be presented as if, let's say this happened to it, like your idyllic perfect citizen, right? Would you still think the same thing? Right?
What is the perfect citizen? What is the perfect?
It's basically Homelander is what they'd say. Homelander is the perfect citizen in their eyes, even though he's an immigrant as well, I guess. So I don't know. I don't fucking know.
Well, he was built in a lab.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well. So I guess actually he is there perfect.
I would say that the moral of The Insider is that there is no such thing as a perfect truth.
Mm-hmm.
That is the thing that we have to cling on to in a world where the truth is so malleable and easily manipulated. It only took a generation of having the internet, 2 generations for us to drive ourselves absolutely insane with it. And we were already doing it before the internet. That's why it's such a great time capsule. That's the lesson of The Insider.
And also just a love song to good journalists everywhere, right?
We don't get a lot of those. I remember there was Spotlight, which was really good about 10 years ago, about the journalists who brought down the Catholic Church in Boston. Back in the 90s, we had more newspaper stuff. There was always a newspaper movie happening all the time because newspapers were these mythological structures that demanded the sacrifice of paper to deliver us the truth every day. At least that was their intended purpose. We simply just don't have any regard for any of that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
The Insider, Michael Mann, 1999. Go see it. Love it. I don't have anything going on that I can tell you about that's coming up after this comes out, because I don't know when it's going to come out. So I'm just going to say thank you so much. Be sure to look for more episodes. We got an entire season ahead of us. I'm looking forward to, keeping on doing what we're doing, which is changing lives with our precise analysis. Any final words?
I'm speechless.
You would be, wouldn't we? We're so exhausted from being so good at this here on The Dead-Eyed Millennial.
Oh, Film Club.
Ah!
Yeah, Film Club.
Bye.
Wipe that smirk off your face!